On today's show, the Dallas Mavericks play the Warriors tonight on Thursday, but they could possibly play them in the first round of the playoffs. We'll talk about why they should avoid that matchup at all costs on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
The Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good!
And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
And welcome. You're locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making Locked On Mavs your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And joining me, as always, my co-host, contributor, writer at Mavs.com. The Warrior Wonder, the One More Thinking. What you got for me, Isaac Harris?
Well, we got the Warriors tonight in town in Dallas. Last time we played the Warriors was a 21-point comeback. So we'll see how motivated the Warriors are.
That was recently.
Yes, that was recent. Welcome to my brothers and sisters who celebrate Lent and honor Lent as we go into the 40 days of that. We have a special fun segment coming up at the end on what the Mavs could give up for Lent. But
yeah, today we're gonna get into the Warriors matchup. The Mavs play the Warriors for the last time tonight. If you're listening to watching this on Thursday, and we're gonna talk about the matchup possible in the playoffs. Why the Mavericks should try to avoid that matchup, and why the Mavs don't match up well with the Warriors in a playoff series, especially if they're going to be at full strength. Then we'll get into Isaac had a sit down with Jared Dudley, wrote a piece on him. We'll talk about why he's such a key contributor for the Mavericks over this next era that the Mavs have, and why the regime change was so big. And then we'll get into a couple of things that the Mavericks and Mavericks players need to give up for Lent. We'll talk about that later. But let's start with the Warriors. So the Mavs play the Warriors, and it is not out of the realm of possibility. Actually, it may be almost probable that the Mavs play the Warriors in the first round of the playoffs. I know all season it seems like we've been talking about, well, what about a matchup with the Jazz or the Grizzlies, or let's try to avoid the Nuggets. But the Warriors now are a real possibility. The Grizzlies are a half game back from the Warriors, and the Mavs are one game up from the Nuggets. And so you start putting it around, and the Warriors end up at 3, the Mavs end up at 6 if the Nuggets pass them, and all of a sudden that's the first round series. How confident would you be going into a first round series playing against a fairly healthy Warriors team?
yeah, so this whole time, we've been debating the three teams and kind of ranking them of Denver and Memphis and Utah. It's like, all right, which one do we want to play? How will Dallas angle at the end of the season? Because we see teams do it every year. They try to angle for a certain matchup and
Always
all of that.
happens.
It'll be a lot of fun to see who is angling for who. But now with the Warriors kind of sliding a little bit, and Memphis, keeping on climbing up, Ja being ridiculous, which the Terry's on right now is insane. He's so much fun. But
Agreed.
It's to see the Warriors in the first round. So for the longest time, for the past few weeks, my ranking has been, I want Utah, shocker. Memphis second on that. Denver's third on that. Denver is so sneaky. One, the fact that they're there and they haven't had Jamal Murray all season, Michael Porter Jr., they've had some other injuries, Jokic, MVP candidate. But if there's a world that they get Jamal Murray back and they get Michael Porter Jr. back, like that's just that's ridiculous team. So I definitely don't want to see them. But you know what? You know who I'm putting over all of those teams of a team I don't want to see in the first round? It's the Golden State Warriors. I just don't want to. I don't want any bit of it. I don't want to see all the montages of We Believe Warriors. I'm sick of that.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
I can't handle any of that. But it's more about the matchup. I don't want to see Steph Curry in a playoff series. I'm sorry. I just don't. Like, we're talking a top 15, top 20 player of all time, like the greatest shooter ever. We know what he can do. And then you factor in Draymond, you factor in Klay. Like, I just don't want to. I don't want any bit of that. Give me any of the other teams over a first round series with Golden State.
We talked about how this Mavericks team is really weird, and they're not necessarily young, they're not necessarily old, and they're not necessarily veterans, right? Like, they're not necessarily young in the league. There's just a lot of guys on this team that have sort of been around a little while, but not. You wouldn't consider them veterans. The guy with the most experience on the team is Reggie Bullock, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Trey Burke, who've all been in the league 8 years. You consider those guys veterans, I guess, at this point, but they're no like old veterans on this team. There's no like PJ Tucker on this team. There's no guys like that that you look at, an Andre Iguodala or somebody like that, of Goran Dragic if he would have been added. That's the first time we've said Goran Dragic since he's been signed, since he's actually been signed.
Oh,
And then I think the oldest guy on the team is Boban, and Bullock. So, but this Mavericks team is just not experienced. They don't have guys that have been in the league a long time. You know, it's a real experienced team is that Golden State Warriors team. Even more so, I think, than that Suns team. And Suns team is better than the Warriors for sure, but the Warriors have been to a lot of finals and a lot of playoff games and have played in a lot of series and have played together, especially that core of Curry and Draymond and Klay. I would throw Looney in there too. Looney's been around for a little while on that team, and he's been around. And they have a lot of different They have a lot of different ways that they can, and a lot of different things they can throw at you, especially when they're at full strength. And for me, your first thing was Steph. Honestly, I would be more worried about Draymond than I would be worried about Steph. At least the Mavs have some guys to run around with Steph now. Draymond on defense would just take the Mavs out of the paint in whatever they try to do, and the Mavs wouldn't be scoring all those points in the paint like they did, against them the other night. And I think that would be a huge problem for the Mavs, because then it's just relying on threes again. It's just living and dying by the three again. And I don't think the Mavs should want any part of a contest like that.
Well, they have the chemistry. They're so smart. They've been there. They've done it. It's just now let's make the small case for it. To where I think there could be somebody in the comments right now saying, "What are y'all talking about? Why not? Why?" If you just look at them in Denver, because I think for me, it's clearly I would prefer Utah and Memphis as those top two teams if we're just talking about preference. And then it's, Denver and Golden State. But what is Denver, what's that comparing those two teams? Denver has Jokic. That's an immediate mismatch for the Mavericks. Like there's no way around that. You have nobody. I mean, you're throwing Dwight Powell, you're throwing Marquise Chris.
Except the fact that Boban can match him point for point and rebound for rebound in whatever matchup against the Nuggets for some reason. It's like the one matchup he's really good in.
Anytime they play now, I immediately just think of when the league shut down.
Didn't he have 37 and like 20? And
I can't. Anyway, the Warriors don't have a guy like that. When you go small, if the Mavericks want to play small, like the Warriors can match that. So like we just saw it the other night. Otto Porter Jr. and Dorian Finney-Smith were the fives. Like you could see that very well in a playoff series. And Draymond's at the 5, and Dorian's at the 5. And so you don't have to worry about that. They also don't have anybody that I'm like really scared about guarding Luka. I mean, which there's very few of those players in the league, like no Kawhi, all that. But I mean, I guess they're throwing Wiggins at him. I guess they're going to try.
They didn't do that the other night. They didn't do that the other. They threw Kuminga and Moody at him a little bit more than that. We didn't see Wiggins on Luka like hardly at all in that last game. We'll see what they do tonight.
They have bodies that they would throw it at Luka. I mean, Luka's going to get his points. I just, with that experience, with those all-time great players, with that shooting, and if Draymond's healthy, like obviously if Draymond's not healthy,
that's huge.
Then it changes a lot. But if Draymond's healthy, running, being the quarterback of that defense, I don't want any part of that, man.
If Draymond's not healthy and Jamal Murray is not healthy, how does that change? Like if Jamal Murray comes back and we just say, oh, he just does not have it. He's could come in and take some shots, but he's not going to be the game changer that he was. Does that change anything for you?
I don't think so. Because the whole thing with Denver is if you let Jokic cook and you say, all right, you're going to get 35 to 40 every playoff game, and you try to take out everybody else, then who's the everybody else? Or if you double Jokic, who's scoring? Is it Aaron Gordon? Is it on a consistent basis in a playoff series? And without Porter, without Jamal Murray,
it's like Monte Morris and Bones Highland and
Will Barton, is he healthy right now?
Right.
I mean, I don't. So it's that I just still prefer Denver over Golden State. The Golden State just scares me, man. Steve Kerr, that's another thing. It's like this dude's been there, done that. Like,
man, you ask Warriors fans and they're done with Steve Kerr. They're like all done with his rotations and everything. It was wild the other night. I was listening to a Twitter Spaces after the Mavs beat him, and it was a lot. There's a lot of feelings from Warriors fans about Steve Kerr, but
isn't every fan base like that though? Like,
for sure. The reactionary stuff. It is what it is. But yeah, that that Warriors, for me, it all comes down to Draymond. Draymond's health if the Draymond is not healthy, I'm feeling good about the Mavericks' chances in that first round series. If he's fully healthy and he's back, then I'm really worried about that. That would be one where I don't think I would pick the Mavs going into it. But
obviously Klay too. Klay's health, like what does he look like? Is by that time another 15, 20 games for Klay? Is he looking like normal Klay? You also have, on a positive note, you have bodies to throw at Steph too. Like Reggie Bullock could chase Steph around. Dorian, you put length on Steph. Some like they'll try to do that.
They did before, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll see. They'll play it tonight. It'll be fun. I think we'll all examine it again after that, comeback win. And it's always fun when these two teams play.
Absolutely. All right, coming up, Isaac got to sit down with Jared Dudley. He wrote about it for Mavs.com. And so we're going to talk about why Jared Dudley is a key part of this Mavs success. The regime has changed, and Jared Dudley is a big part of that. We'll talk about that coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about Bet Online. Bet Online is the one place to find the latest odds, totals, player performance props, and to find where the next coach is going to be fired. There's all kinds of lines and odds on Bet Online.
What's that Vogel line look like?
Whew, that one's coming up big. We got a couple of specials here for the NBA. They still have odds on Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons 3-pointers made in the regular season. Under 2 or over 2? Under 2 is minus 215.
I don't care enough to bet on this.
About Ben Simmons?
About Ben Simmons.
There's a lot of Ben Simmons ones in here. There's a couple NBA futures one. The championship odds. You can just bet if the East or the West will win the NBA title. The West is the favorite at minus 145, and then the East is the underdog here. That's interesting to me.
The East is the underdog? I'd take the East.
You take the East in that. So there you go. If you want to take the East, go check out Bet Online. It's not just basketball. They're your source for hockey, boxing, UFC, odds, and everything on Bet Online. Head to the website, use your mobile device to find the trends in action. Bet Online, where the game starts. All right, Isaac Harris. You wrote a piece about Jared Dudley, and I thought there's some really, really good stuff in here. And we wanted to talk about it and talk about why Jared Dudley, why does he matter, right? Like, what does he matter, and what can he tell us about what the future of this Mavs franchise could look like?
Yeah, so I went to practice a while back, and I knew I wanted to do a story on Dudley just because I'd heard a few things about his transition, and that was a little rocky in the sense of it was so quick. It caught so many people by surprise. And I just want to hear from his own words, like
because he thought he was going to play.
Yeah, the first part of the story was, he was telling me very passionately outside of practice that day of, dude, AD, Russ, LeBron, like they all wanted him back. He's like, I thought I was going to be a Laker this year, and not only that, but the Lakers waited so long to tell him that he wasn't going to come back. He didn't have a chance. He's like, he has relationships with Ty Lue. He has a relationship with Shanti Billups. And it's like, he had this time to join another team, to be a vet at the end of the bench, but they waited so long in free agency that other teams had already stacked their rosters. And then they have this Zoom call. They call him out and like, hey, we want to talk over Zoom. He's in Vegas working out with Josh Green in Vegas. And he's like, takes the Zoom call, and Lakers are like, nah, like, we're not going to bring you back. We're going younger. Now, a part that I didn't put in there, I actually asked him a counter to that. I was like, is it weird to you, like, that they told you that they were going to go younger and then they didn't go younger?
They went so old.
And he pushed back. He's like, no, it's not weird. He's like, they didn't know that they were. It's funny now because these two players are not on the team. He's like, they didn't know they were going to get Rondo and DeAndre Jordan on buyouts, and then it's like they got bought out, they joined the team, and now they're gone. But
they have 9 players that are older than 30 on their roster.
That's insane. So, but anyway, the whole thing about it was,
hold on, older than 32 on their roster.
Hook this up to my veins. But then, St. Jean calls him. Obviously, Dudley was on the Lakers. St. Jean,
Greg St. Jean, Mavs assistant coach.
Yeah, with Kidd, and he's like, "Hey, we might have a spot for you." The Mavericks were looking at some other guys to be in that assistant coach role.
This was a part that I don't think anybody pointed out that you and I were talking about. They were like, "Wow, this could have been really fascinating." Who was the assistant coach the Mavs were looking at instead of Dudley?
When Dudley's looking down at me, and we're sitting there talking, because he's a good 6'8", 6'9". He's like looking at me. He's like, yeah, I think they were thinking about like Rasheed Wallace as a candidate. I'm like, whoa, like Rasheed Wallace. Where did this name come from? And I just laughed because we've been joking about it because obviously I told Nick about it right after it happened. I was like, dude, Luka's tech stuff. Like it would be the best storyline ever that Luka's like leading the league in text. Rashid is on the bench. Like there would be a moment to where Luka gets a tech. He goes to a bench and Rashid's like talking him up. Like the Draymond meme of like, talking him up saying.
He's talking to Kevin Durant and pointing at his chest. Like, you got this. Like, bro, this is all you.
Let me tell you how not to get text.
Oh my gosh. Rasheed Wallace and Luka, like, would Luka have broken the tech? Like, would he have been suspended already for the one game if Rasheed Wallace was his assistant coach instead of Jared Dudley?
Would Rasheed already been thrown out because he would have argued on behalf of Luka?
Oh, fair. If he was the barrier, he could have been the buffer. By the way, true. Luka's last tech against the Lakers got rescinded already, right? The one against Scott Foster when he was like, I'm gonna get my ankle twisted. That one got rescinded, so he's now 3 away from getting 1 game suspended. But so I thought that was really fascinating because of the what if with Rasheed Wallace. Yes,
and he said Rasheed. He mentions Jason Terry, and the whole thing was the Mavericks wanted a guy in the spot that was a former player and fairly recent former player that could relate to the guys, because being a player's coach in today's game. And I talked with Dudley after this about how important it is, especially in today's game, to have a player's coach that can relate to the players. I mean, there's a quote in the story saying, if a player doesn't like the coach, he ain't going there. Like, it's just point blank simple. Like, you have to have this relationship with players. And
was that a problem in the past?
Oh man, people want to talk about the front office playing and rolling that, but I think the target was a little off. But when I started talking to some of the players, and I talked to Brunson and asked Reggie Bullock, Tim Hardaway, Maxey, Dorian about what it's like to have Dudley as a coach, they all talked about, man, he just finished playing, so he knows he's been through the fire. That was a comment. Like Tim Hardaway, these guys trust him because he's done it. And some of the even like low key shots some of them like took of Dorian said, he's like, he wasn't the fastest guy out there, he was, but they appreciated how successful he was because he wasn't the most athletic guy. And even towards the end of his career, he obviously lost what athleticism he had, but he was still a successful basketball player. But anyway, so read the story and hear a bunch of their quotes and stuff. But he talks about just like his adjustment to being a coach, his scouting stuff, how much he likes it, but there's a key part in this. Somebody tweeted at me after I posted the story. They're like, hey, I love the Infinity Gauntlet, analogy that you used on this, because I asked him, I was like, who are you pulling from? Like, as an assistant coach, because he wanted to be a coach. He wants to be a head coach, all of that. He didn't know if after the Lakers told him no, he had those like 48, 72 hours. He's like, dude, I was going to go try to be a GM. He was going to enter Adam Silver's GM program and go to try to be a GM. It, obviously switched course, became an assistant with Kidd because he wants to be a head coach. And he's like, I think, he's pulling from all these coaches in his career. He's like, and this way, direct quote from me. He said, I think what will separate me is from a lot of these coaches is the communication, because actually that was the second quote. He pulled stuff from Doc Rivers, Ty Lue, the X's and O's, the motivation from Doc Rivers, the defense from Frank Vogel that he's helping instill in the Mavs right now. Like we talked after practice and he was supposed to be scrimmaging. And the first thing I said was, hey, I can wait. Cause at that point I was like, I can wait, if you want to scrimmage, cause he always scrimmages with the guys, Josh Green and them always doing their thing. He's like, no, we're good. We're just still rolling through Vogel stuff, Vogel defense stuff. And it's like, that's their thing. He's like, they're instilling that. And so continue on. He said, I think what will separate me from a lot of these coaches is the communication. And he said, this Dudley talking, if I can look LeBron in the face and tell him he's messing up and play better and call him out, then I can call anyone out. There's a certain way you must do it. It's a unique thing not all coaches have. I've hung out with 19-year-old Giannis, 20-year-old Booker, Nash at 38, and Shaq at 37. And he says he has range on how to talk to somebody. And I mean, what coaches have that? Like, I do believe, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid here. Okay. Dudley had me convinced after our, hangout there that he's going to be he's going to be a head coach one day. Like I'm all here for it. I think he's going to be good at it. But it was the last quote of all of this that I know a lot of Mavs fans, love this. When he's talking about his relationships, he's like, I know 70% of the league. He's always talking to guys. And I just asked him, I was like, this is kind of really in the middle of our talk. And I didn't have it planned. He was just talking about how he talks to everybody around the league. And I was like, hey, well, what's the league saying? Like, what's the league saying about the Mavs? If you're talking to everybody around the league, what's everybody saying? And this is Dudley, storymavs.com. He said, they love the city. Most people believe Luka's top 5. Some people either love Mark Cuban or don't get him. Thank you for letting me leave that quote in there.
The Mavs let you leave that quote in.
He said half and half on that. I think there is a lot of potential. Them doing Kidd and Nico is a power move. Nico has been offered many jobs in front offices. I think that is huge. And it's not a matter of how, but when. Once we get those meetings, it will be hard to turn this down.
Coming up, why that quote about Nico and Jason Kidd being a power move coming from Jared Dudley is so important and crucial for the Mavericks. And also, a couple things the Mavs have to give up for Lent. We're going to have some fun with this coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about rockauto.com. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models for cars, it's impossible to have all the parts that you could possibly need for your car or truck. I see a lot of cars and trucks out there. There's a lot of different ones all over the place. How could one store possibly have everything that you need? Rock Auto does. They have everything that you could possibly need. Why would you want to also choose to spend 30%, 50%, even 100% more for the same parts at a chain store or car dealership? Go check it out. They're a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. They have some easy stuff too. They have carpet. They have things that you can replace yourself without having to, look up a long YouTube or learn how to be a mechanic. You can just do some easy things on there as well. Go check it out at rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box? And know that we sent you. Again, rockauto.com. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, Isaac Harris. We've been talking about Jared Dudley. You had to sit down with him and wrote a great piece on Mavs.com. We'll link it in the description about how he's such a key part of what the Mavs are doing right now. And I think he represents something. I'm not sure he's going to be around for like the next 5-6 years or something like that, or maybe the rest of Jason Kidd's tenure, because he just seems like a guy that just has such big dreams. Like maybe you have, maybe you felt differently after actually talking to him. But I think just his statement about what you said right before we hit break, them doing Kidd and Nico was a power move. Nico has been offered many jobs in front offices. I think that is huge. It is not a matter of how, but when. Once we get those meetings, it will be hard to turn this down. And both Nico and Jason Kidd have proven so far that they are, pretty good coach, pretty good front office so far, and that they're going to relate to players. And that's a completely different thing than what the Mavericks have had for the last 13 years, like longer than that, like over a decade. This is a very different shift from what the Mavericks have had. And coming from a former player that chose the Mavs instead of going to probably anywhere else in the league if he wanted to be an assistant coach, he came and chose the Mavs.
Yeah, I hate to do like the comparison of like, oh, look at those two guys compared to these two guys. But you look at Rick Carlisle, Donnie Nelson, and it's like, I love Donnie Nelson, still love Donnie Nelson. And, when you factor those two guys in, Donnie, this, old school Texan, going in some of these meetings, there's been different stories written about how he handled free agency, where he,
businessman
meetings and, all that stuff. And then combine that with Rick Carlisle, this grizzled, older coach, one of the most successful,
pilot piano
coaches.
Player.
Yes. And I'm just going to leave it at that. And we know checkered history with players and all that. When you take that and you flip it to a Hall of Fame point guard in Jason Kidd, that by all accounts, it feels like so many players love this guy, from Giannis to the, people of the Lakers and the Mavericks team right now. And then Nico Harrison, that the sole hiring of him was based on relationships through Nike and all this, like so many players. Like, I can't tell you how many players talk to this guy before games. Like, and once again, not to do the whole like Donnie versus Nico thing, but like, I barely saw any players or anybody talking to Donnie before the game, or even seeing really Donnie on the court that much. Not saying like court before the game is like deciding free agents or anything, but man, Nico's like over there like working it, like working the sidelines, talking to players, sitting on the opposing bench, talking to different people, coaches, all that. And it's like, because everybody knows him. So it's such a unique, stark difference between those two guys for just comparing, 2 and 2.
It's different. And it's a new regime for the Mavericks. Jared Dudley is now a part of it. There's some other really good stuff in that piece, so go check it out. And yeah, Hopefully he's right about those meetings. I did find the quote about Mark Cuban that either they either love him or they don't get him. He didn't say hate, which I thought was very, very savvy on his part. They don't get him, which is fine. You know, you'd rather have somebody not get somebody than hate him, right? Like,
yeah,
that's fine. So there you go. That's Jared Dudley. All right, let's end here with some fun. Isaac, I don't know anything about Lent except for you just give something up for it. What's the whole thing?
Oh yeah. Well, I just came from Ash Wednesday service. I had the ashes on my head. It's the beginning of the Lent season. You know, you give up. So I'm not going to go on the whole theological discussion here, but let's just use the basis of it as you give up something for the next 40 days. It ends on Easter. And if you celebrate that and all of that. So we're going to use that as the basis because there's a lot of jokes like, hey, I'm giving up this for Lent, you know, all this different stuff. So if the Mavericks, if we could pick whether it's a player or the team and say, all right, can this guy give this up for Lent for the next 40 days? We're going to do that.
All right. So
like Jason Kidd, can you give up the Rangers flat bill like for 40 days?
The fitted Rangers hat.
The fitted baby blue Rangers flat bill. Can we give it up? Can we just put it in the closet for 40 days? I think we can.
How many times have we seen him in that same hat?
A lot. If I had more time on my hands, I would go in one Twitter Spaces, and then I would clip a bunch of the stuff of his appearances with that hat.
There's one thing on the court that a player does on the Mavericks that just grinds my. If I'm going to do the Peter Griffin, you know what really grinds my gears? It's Dwight Powell, and it's not the threes. I know that's what some people are thinking. Dwight Powell's got to give up the threes. No, I'm okay with those. It's the mid-range shot when he's just in a sea of nothing. It's just a space around him. He somehow picks up the ball from the ground, looks at it, faces at the rim, and goes, "There's no one around me."
There's a reason, bro. There's a reason why no one's around
open
me.
for days, and then just takes the mid-range jumper. We need to give that up for Lent and then some. The rest of Dwight's game during the time of Lent is incredible. He's an all-star player in this season of life
that's
right
what
now.
We call him. Lent Dwight.
Lent Dwight is amazing.
Spring Dwight.
But give up the mid-range. Give up that mid-range shot where there's just no one around you. There's a reason.
Give up, yes, please give up the mid-range. I'll say this about Bertans. Bertans, can we give up the moving threes? Like in motion, coming off like there's just I love Bertans being a flamethrower, but when he's like going off one leg sideways, launching a three, I might give it up.
Yeah, I didn't write these down as moving because some of the moving ones are fine. It's the horizontal threes. When his body is horizontal to the ground and he's like leaning over like this, and he still throws up a three somehow. Those are the ones that we just got to get rid of. I mean, those are. I mean, you're just asking for that one not to go down, and when they do, it's incredible. But man, those are rough. Maxi, I think Luka may want you to give up the post ups.
Oh.
I don't know if you guys saw in the game the other night against was it the Warriors? Yeah, he was posting up against Steph, and like Maxi gets position on Steph in the post, like deep in the post, and Luka's on the other side of the lane, and Luka's like dribbling around, and he doesn't look up, and then as soon as he looks up, Steph gets in front of Maxi, and then Luka's calling for Maxi to get it ahead, and before Maxi can even like move, Luka chucks a pass right at him, and it gets turned over, and it was a really bad turnover. Then Luka yells at Maxi the whole rest of the way down the court, and is yelling at him, which Luka is extremely. Luka's very motivating towards Maxi. Like when he misses shots, Luka, you can tell he looks at him and is like, "You got this. You know, hit the next one. Keep shooting. Don't give up open, shots and things like that." But that was one play where I was like, "Oh man, maybe Maxi just stay away from the basket there."
Yeah, no post ups, Maxi. We can't run. It's I know KP left, but we can't just replace his post ups with Maxi's. Okay, I got one. Luka. I know he must love him because he's on a tear right now, and that might be why he's wearing them so much. The Zoom Separate Jordans that he's wearing, he's won it for 10 straight games. This
Doncic,
is
saucy.
I'm not a fan of them. He obviously likes them.
The shoes, he's got to get rid of them.
It's the shoes, but I enjoyed actually Luka Doncic on Twitter, one of my favorite accounts. But you know what makes their Twitter account less fun? When they're just tweeting out the same picture of the same shoe every game. They're like, he's wearing The same zoom separates again. They're not bad looking shoes. I want him to switch it up. I know Jordan Brand can do some fun.
Would you prefer him to change shoes like 2-3 times a game like he was doing?
Yes.
Well, yeah.
Sign me up. I love it.
The Mavericks as a franchise.
Oh,
I know some of you that are a part of this organization, maybe in ticketing or in other places, listen to this podcast. Mavs man has to go for Lent and then forever. He haunts my dreams, and anytime I'm in the arena, I will go back to a game tomorrow. Today, if you're listening to this on Thursday, I will go back to a game, and I will know where Mavs man is at all times because I just have to know, or else I get this eerie feeling that he's right behind me.
are we sure that him and Mavrello are not related?
That Mavrello is like a.
Have we did a DNA test?
Do we know that Mavrello is not the bastard child of Mavs man? I just did a DNA test. Turns out I'm 100% a synthetic leather ball that lived under the stadium for years until he finally emerged and claimed himself as the owner of the Mavs.
Where are we at with Mavrello right now?
Where is Mavrello's only tweets now? He's not part of any videos or anything. Well,
You idiot.
that clip from Cuban came from a clip with Mavrello, and now we haven't heard from him since. Cuban yelled at him, and now he's gone.
I remember when that thing first got introduced and the whole like build up to it, and then they launched it, and fans were like, "What is going on?"
Do you still have that foam face?
Yeah, my kid loves it. Roman loves it.
That's what it was for. It was for the
but
kids.
no, I'm actually here for it. I don't mind it. He's still in my my header picture on Twitter.
Mavrello is?
It's because it's me with both the owners of the Mavs. I'm down for it.
I didn't realize it because it's behind your profile picture, but Mavrello is in your header on Twitter. There you go. That's what the Mavs need to give up for Lent. Fun stuff. Let us know what you think the Mavs should give up for Lent. And yeah, we'll have the Mavs.
The current brand. They should give up the current brand.
They got to do a rebrand. New colors, green. Bring back the green.
The Mavs tell me that the
Win or loss, we'll break down the Dallas Mavericks game against the Golden State Warriors. It's a big one. If the Mavs win this game, then they're like almost even closer to playing the Warriors in a first-round series because then the Warriors will drop to being tied with the Memphis Grizzlies. That one's a big one. We'll have that post-game for you tomorrow. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs. Boom.